Welcome back to the Common Denominator. I'm Ilana Rachel Daniel. Today we will discuss in brief the only thing that's on our minds here in Israel, and that, regrettably, is Hezbollah and nothing but. Hezbollah, as you may have heard from the blaring panic of the media, is in fact a formidable army to be reckoned with. As devastating as was Hamas's invasion into Israel on October 7th, they, as has been said, are the least able of Israel's many enemies, while Hezbollah is dubbed the crown jewel of the Islamic Republic of Iran's regime, who, let us be very clear, is the root of the terror that tyrannizes not only their own 90 million citizens at home, but the West at every opportunity they can muster. Terrorism is, in fact, their entire reason for being. The Islamic Republic of Iran is the greatest benefactor of terror worldwide, and it's inexplicably been permitted to flourish since their violent takeover in 1979. While it is true that democracies are and should be highly reluctant to go to war, the short-sighted aversion to take the steps needed to stop terrorists in their tracks has eroded the deterrence that once minimized attacks. And as a direct result, this will cost exponentially more lives and chaos than had those who commit crimes of humanity been confronted the moment their malignancy was detected. The fear of confrontation with Hezbollah is founded. War between us holds the potential to devastate both tiny and surrounded Israel, as well as Lebanon, who, not unlike Iran, suffocates under its parasitic, implanted leadership. When one speaks of negotiations, it is with an assumption that there are two functioning parties who have other considerations on the table and wish to avoid war. Here, this is not the case. Hezbollah, like Hamas and like the Islamic Republic of Iran, who feeds them, are not legitimate governments. They are an invasive and conquering species that suck the life out of each location they invade, and their entire reason for existence is destruction. Destruction, first and foremost, to Israel, and then, like dominoes falling, God forbid, the West. There is no negotiating peace with an entity that was created with the mission of war. There's only a matter of when the confrontation will take place, on whose terms, and with what strength they have been able to amass. We are deeply troubled for the safety of our people and unique and beloved country, ours that is home to the indigenous Jewish people and half of the world's Jewry. With us comes civilization, and harm to us leads to the degradation of the law and order and abundant freedoms that give us the ability to call out the wrong behavior we witness and to demand better for our present and our children's future. It is truly astonishing where we stand now in the 9 months since October 7th. An objectively savage massacre was carried out against the young and the old inside their homes. Never could a case of good versus evil, right versus wrong, been more cut and dry. And yet here we are now, with open Jewish hate flooding the streets of the West and terrorists emboldened enough to drag the world into war. Hamas really did know how to read the world vibe and is as high on the horse as could be. Their success is greater than Sinwar could ever have dared to fantasize. Had Hamas's October 7th invasion met instead with the unflinching response of the West to stamp out a barbarism that would rape and torture and murder women and children en masse, its flames would not lick at all our feet now. My question above all is why? Why were these forces allowed to garner such strength? What combination of weak-kneed leadership, corruption, and bad actors got us to this point? And how do we, the people, find our way out now? If Hezbollah's army should in battle begin to get the better of Israel, the US may or may not step in our defense. As unrecognizable as Biden's White House has become to Americans at home, so too are they to allies overseas. Hezbollah enjoys less ambiguity in its backing and has the offers of Iran and its many proxies to assist them in a bind. The greater problem to you, dear listener abroad, is that Iran is backed by Russia and China, and were they to get involved, and the world could be engulfed in war, God forbid. These are the direct results of the weakening of our moral clarity within, and thus our action without. Beyond the flashing headlines and fear, who is Hezbollah, and from which depths were they created? Though the Palestinian Liberation Organization had been operating in Lebanon since 1960, it was largely based in Jordan until the year 1970, when they and Yasser Arafat were expelled after attempting to seize control of the Hashemite kingdom. That was called the Jordanian Civil War, also known as Black September. It was an armed conflict between Jordan, led by King Hussein, and the PLO, led by its chairman Yasser Arafat. The majority of the fighting occurred in September 1970, though some did continue until July 1971. Once they were forced to flee Jordan for Lebanon, the PLO established themselves there until they were banished from Lebanon as well in 1982. During that period, and with the support of hundreds of thousands of refugees, Arafat succeeded in gaining control over several parts of Lebanon using their own police force, military, and economic infrastructure to effectively establish the PLO as a state within a state in Lebanon's south. After decades of tension from PLO terrorist attacks and their amassing of forces, then Prime Minister Menachem Begin and Defense Minister Ariel Sharon launched in 1982 Operation Peace for the Galilee, aiming to eliminate the PLO threat from Israel's northern border by destroying its forces and ending Syria's continued geostrategic presence and influence over Lebanon's military and economy. There was a plan in place to support the formation of a Lebanese government that would maintain peace with Israel, represented by the Christian leader Bashir Gemayel. Only 4 years earlier, in 1978, Israel, also led by Menachem Begin, had signed a peace deal with Egypt. The Israeli government hoped that by expelling the PLO and installing a pro-Israeli Christian government, they would next sign a treaty with Gemayel in Lebanon that Begin said would give Israel, quote, 40 years of peace. Bashir Gemayel was a Lebanese militia commander who founded and later became the supreme commander of the Lebanese forces. Using the strength of those defenses, he united Christian militia factions under the slogan of Uniting the Christian Rifle. Gemayel was allied with Israel in its fight against the PLO, and he was elected president on August 23, 1982. Unfortunately, less than 1 month later, before even taking office, Gemayel was assassinated. The hoped-for peace agreement was never signed. And instead of 40 years of peace, Israel has had 44 years of violent and relentless conflict on its northern border from an increasingly well-armed and dangerous threat that has now reached a point of no return. After the catastrophic damage they caused in Beirut and beyond, Arafat and the PLO leadership were expelled and left to set up a new camp in Tunisia. While the PLO was temporarily crushed, they were simply replaced by other terrorist organizations, and one of those included the formation of Hezbollah. In 1985, the IDF pulled back its troops, but maintained a presence in Lebanon with a security zone in its south. This was in order to protect Israeli towns and villages in the Galil by helping keep Hezbollah and other terrorists away from its border. Later, under Ehud Barak, Israel fully withdrew in May of 2000. By this time, Hezbollah had developed into a powerful and potent army. Hezbollah, translated, is the Party of God, or the Party of Allah, and is a Lebanese Shia Islamic organization that functions both as an army and as a paramilitary group. Hezbollah is led by its Secretary General, Hassan Nasrallah. The group was founded by Iran in 1982 and follows the ideology of Iran's former supreme leader, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Khomeini, of course, was the founder of the Islamic Republic of Iran and one of the main leaders of the Iranian Revolution that ended the Iranian monarchy by overthrowing the Pahlavi dynasty. Hezbollah considers itself part of a transnational Shiite movement, and not just the National Lebanese Party. It was founded by and modeled on the teachings of Ayatollah Khomeini. Although created in 1982, it was not until 1985 that Hezbollah came out of the closet to publicly reveal its ideological stance in an open letter. This document showed Hezbollah to be a continuation of the Islamic Revolution and declared its obedience to one leader, wise and just, the Wali al-Faqih. This is the concept of the guardianship of the Islamic jurist, who was at the time to believe Khomeini. It's rooted in Shia Islam and justifies the rule of the clergy over the state. Hezbollah has earned the support of many locals by promoting a network of social services in Shia-ruled parts of Lebanon, which includes hospitals, schools, vocational institutions, and charities. This is the stick and carrot way that a terrorist regime takes over and gains local support. First, by causing and then feeding off the endless crises, chaos, and suffering from the corruption, economic collapse, state ineptitude, and neglect that they caused, and then in turn offering the vital services needed to survive and garner loyalties. Hezbollah has de facto control over regions in Lebanon, including part of the south of the country on its border with Israel. It operates with bald-faced impunity and has even been implicated in the 2005 assassination of former Lebanese Prime Minister Rafik Hariri in a car bombing in Beirut that killed 22 people. There is a UN resolution 1701, which was installed to end the 2006 Israel-Hezbollah conflict, which began after Hezbollah attacked Israel, killing 8 soldiers and kidnapping 2 IDF reservists, Ehud Goldwasser and Eldad Regev. The month-long conflict resulted in over 1,000 dead in Lebanon, and as well as the death of 121 Israeli soldiers and 43 civilians. Resolution 1701 called on Israel to withdraw behind the blue line, which is the de facto border with Lebanon. And in Lebanon, it called for, quote, security arrangements to prevent the resumption of hostilities, including the establishment between the Blue Line and the Litani River of an area free of any armed personnel, assets, and weapons other than those of the government of Lebanon and of UNIFIL. In effect, calling for Hezbollah to be disarmed south of the Litani River. Israel kept to the agreement and withdrew its forces, but Hezbollah did not. In fact, rather the opposite. Hezbollah had built up their military infrastructure along the border with Israel before the eyes of the world, and the 1701 resolution has never been enforced, not by UNIFIL, whose primary reason for being is to take actions to restore or maintain peace, nor has the Lebanese army ever taken back any measure of control. At this moment in time, 15,000 UNIFIL forces sit in Lebanon and witness the burning fires in Israel from the relentless Hezbollah missile attack on private citizens' homes across our north since October. The UN has zero track record of maintaining the peace they were created for, and as pointed out by many, in place of effectivity, it engages in endless moral pontificating to cover up for its impotence and irrelevance. After forming, Hezbollah wasted no time in demonstrating its intention and capabilities. In October 1983, a Hezbollah suicide bomber detonated a truck loaded with 6 tons of explosives, crashing into the 4-story U.S. Marine barracks in Beirut. This attack killed 241 U.S. military personnel, including 220 Marines, 18 sailors, and 3 soldiers. Within minutes, a second suicide bomber detonated another truck bomb, killing 58 French paratroopers. 6 Lebanese civilians were also murdered. Until 9/11 in 2001, this was the single deadliest day for the U.S. Marine Corps since World War II, and the single worst French military loss since the end of the Algerian War. Let us be crystal clear. Hezbollah is not a government with whom one engages in negotiations. Hezbollah is a malignant tumor of devouring terror established solely for the purpose of destruction, like its creator in the Islamic regime. And they are not our equal. In one of their released versions of open letter mission type statements, Hezbollah clarifies that point with this quote regarding Israel, saying, "Struggle will end only when this entity is obliterated. We recognize no treaty with it, no ceasefire, and no peace agreements, whether separate or consolidated. We vigorously condemn all plans for negotiation with Israel and regard all negotiators as enemies, for the reason that such negotiation is nothing but the recognition of the legitimacy of the Zionist occupation of Palestine. One thing that can be said for them is that they leave little room for confusion. Hezbollah keeps its capabilities closely guarded, but analysts believe they have upwards of 200,000 rockets and missiles. This arsenal includes land attack missiles and rockets, anti-tank missiles, and anti-air missiles. Recently, a member of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard boasted that Hezbollah possessed an arsenal of over 1 million rockets of different types. This week, in a warning to Israel, Lebanon's Grand Shia Mufti, Ahmad Kabalan, said that Hezbollah would fire up to 500,000 missiles towards Israel if the current conflict escalated into a full-blown war. Additionally, Hassan Nasrallah has recently threatened that no place in Israel, a country the size of New Jersey, would be spared from attack. He even had the audacity to openly threaten Cyprus if they were to act in any way that might be interpreted as aiding Israel's efforts. In the last Lebanon war, Hezbollah fired some 4,000 rockets over the course of a month. It's now estimated that they will be firing 5,000 rockets a day. The large number of rockets could overwhelm our Iron Dome defense system. Furthermore, it's feared that in the case of war, Hezbollah would target Israel's energy grid, destroying, God forbid, our power plants and offshore gas rigs. Last week, a senior state electricity official warned that a war with Hezbollah could severely disrupt Israel's power infrastructure. Shaul Goldstein was quoted as saying, "We cannot promise electricity if there is a war in the north." Energy Minister Eli Cohen was quick to push back on those claims, and Israel Electric Corporation CEO Meir Spiegler also criticized the remarks. But Israelis understand that we are in uncharted territory, and no one can assure us how far this conflict could go, nor how devastating our losses could be. Hezbollah is the most heavily armed non-state actor in the world. Although it is Hezbollah's missile arsenal which garners headlines, in 2021, Nasrallah claimed that the terror group had 100,000 trained fighters. Thousands of Hezbollah fighters were deployed to support embattled President Assad in the Syrian civil war, and that's provided the group with valuable battle experience. This is a significant threat, particularly when you consider the carnage done by a few thousand Hamas soldiers who entered on October 7th. It is long known that Hezbollah has battle plans to seize towns and cities in the north, God forbid, to try to hold them for weeks or months. As technological advances are made by governments worldwide, the terrorists of this world have increasingly taken to driving the war underground, as cockroaches and vermin will do. Networks of sub-terminal terror tunnels have been and are being built across the world. And the question that has been asked and avoided in recent years is to the extent of Hezbollah's tunnel system. According to Tal Be'eri from the Israeli security think tank Alma Research and Education Center, Hezbollah has dug hundreds of kilometers of tunnels, dubbing Lebanon the land of tunnels. Tal Be'eri believes that Hezbollah has a larger, more sophisticated network than does Hamas, its Gazan counterpart. Using open source intelligence, researchers at the Alma Research and Education Center believe they have acquired detailed information on Hezbollah's tunnel network, including staging centers to defend against an Israeli invasion. They've even estimated just one Hezbollah attack tunnel to be 45 kilometers in length. In 2019, during Operation Northern Shield, the IDF discovered and destroyed several tunnels near the Israeli border. Even more concerning, Berry believes Hezbollah has explosive tunnels that could be detonated to kill Israeli troops above them. It is believed that Hezbollah has also received technical support from North Korea and has used the opportunity of civilian infrastructure projects to expand its tunnel network. This massive underground infrastructure has been built directly under the noses of UN peacekeepers. This is more evidence piled onto the mountainous and damning heap of documentation that shows just how much the UN knows about the details and locations of these tunnels and other terrorist activity that it may have outright aided and abetted, or if not, then ignored in and surrounding Israel. See UN Watch's research for more on that subject. For nearly 9 months now, since October 8th, Hezbollah has been firing on the north of Israel in near daily attacks with cross-border rockets, drones, and anti-tank missiles. Kiryat Shmona sits a mere 3 kilometers from Lebanon's border, and its 22,000 residents have nearly all since fled. In all, some 80,000 residents of towns and villages have been forced from their homes. Citizens are desperate to return, but beyond the active and ongoing danger to their lives, some have no houses to return to, them having been deliberately targeted and destroyed by Hezbollah. Wish as I do, there's no way to spin this to find a silver lining. We face genocidal forces who are more emboldened than they have been in a century. Israel is not fighting Lebanon any more than it's fighting Iran. What Israel fights are the invasive cancers of terrorism that have conquered those lands, destroying their native populations and cultures, and terrorizing those of us throughout the region and beyond. We aid the more than 80% of Iranians who despise their wicked leadership, as well as the Lebanese and all those who desire to live lives of peace and freedom. Would that the nations of the West come to aid us and in turn, themselves. When battling bullies such as these, the question is not must we fight, but when? Do we engage them now and confront the fears of which we have spoken, or do we wait to battle them in the future when they're likely to have grown stronger technologies and capabilities, leaving the odds even less favorable? As has been a theme throughout this podcast, and one we would love very much to deviate from, Israel's decisions are to be made from the impossible choices that appear to either way guarantee a measure of harm, God forbid, to innocence. I don't have words of wisdom nor bravado facing this manner of threat to all that I cherish and live for. I do believe in the power of sincere prayer, and I believe in the power of expressing gratitude for all that we have. I ask for all of you who hear this to pray with profound sincerity for God's protection over this beloved land and people. Doing so is to pray for the civilization and order that roots us in a life where we might each thrive and leave a bright future for our children. The people of Israel long for nothing more than to lead utterly mundane lives, one without the threat of attack at every turn. I believe that the people of the world who understand this vastly outnumber the disfigured masses who do not. And I hope that the depth of our prayer and actions of integrity will bring our world to a vitality we have not experienced in a very long time. May God guide us and protect us, whether we are deserving of it or not. May we see miracles that point to our only source of strength in God. I'm Ilana Rachel Daniel, and this is the Common Denominator.